So I'm about to show you the best sales tracking system for tint shops that I personally use for my business and that our clients doing $100,000 a month in tint, PPF, and ceramic coatings use. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly why you need to start tracking, what you need to track, and how to track it. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Ismail and I own Tint Scale. And we've helped hundreds of tint businesses grow with marketing and sales. So let me show you the best sales tracking system. Now, first of all, here is why you need to track your sales. You want to know which source and service that your leads are closing from. Now, by source, I mean Facebook ads, Google ads, organic, SEO, phone call. That's what I mean by source. And then also what service your leads are closing for the most. So for example, tint, PPF, ceramic coatings. And the reason you want to know this is because you cannot improve without having data, first of all. And think about if you're trying to lose weight and you weigh yourself once a week, you're not going to lose weight as fast as if you weigh yourself once per day. Because the more you track and the faster you track data, the faster you will actually improve just because of the fact that you were tracking it. But secondly, this allows you to tweak stuff in your marketing. And what I mean is, let's say, for example, that you're closing a lot of tint jobs, but you're not closing enough PPF jobs. Then you know that, hey, you need to change stuff in your PPF ads, also your sales process, but you can, at the minimum, change stuff in your ads. Maybe it's the messaging, maybe add some pricing, maybe have some different videos in your marketing so that you end up closing more PPF jobs. And by the way, you can see the trend. Like if you see it increase over time, then you know you're doing well. That's the first reason why you need to track. The second reason, if you're not already convinced why you need to track, is that the sheet or the tracking will show you that it's not always about getting better at sales that will help you close more jobs. I'll show you an example in a second, but everyone thinks to get more sales, you have to get better at sales. That is not the case. You do not always have to get better at sales. You can get more sales by fixing your sales process rather than your sales skill or sales ability. So let's check an example of the sheet that we set up. Now, this is a sheet that we set up for all of our clients coming in, and this is just filled with some sample data. So I want to show you a few things. Like over here, what's going to happen is you're going to get these leads that fill up. Now, what you want to be tracking is your speed to lead. So how fast you reached out to the lead. Did they pick up the first time you called them? If they did, yes. If they did not, no. And then did you have a conversation with them? The reason you're tracking pickup rate and conversation rate separately is just because sometimes they don't pick up on that first call, but they'll text you back or they'll call you back, or you call them like the second time and they pick up. That is, if you've had a conversation with them, then that is what you're tracking over here. Scheduled in person, not that important. But then the next important thing is sale. Did they close or not? Yes or no? Objection. What was the objection? And for our clients, we have a bunch of different drop downs like talk to the wife, talk to husband, which is talk to spouse, price shopping, they want a cheaper price, they want it the same day and you can't, they say they're not ready, aka like for PPF, the car isn't there, they say it's too expensive or they want to think about it. These are the main objections that we've seen. And the last thing is revenue. And you can also have notes, by the way. This is important if you have salesperson, like notes just like this, follow-up 1, follow-up 2 is fine. But these are very, very important because with this sheet, for example, our sheet is set up this way where it shows you the data. But with any sheet, like if you can just set it up to show you the data, you will see so much cool stuff. And I'll just show you an example. Because everything is filled out, we now know that we're closing 40% of our leads. We know how much revenue we've made exactly to the dollar. We know our conversation rate and our pickup rate. So we know that we're speaking to almost 90% of our leads. And this is a very, very important number to keep track of. I'll show you better an example in a second. But before I do, you can also see what service has closed the most. So your Google Ads form in this case is closing at 67% and your phone calls are closing at only 25%. So you can maybe tweak something in your marketing to push the form more often than the phone call. And like if your meta ads are closing more than your Google ads, you can push more spend to your meta ads and increase the budget over there, decrease it on Google, because ultimately you want to make more money, right? That is why we have this sheet. That's the first thing. Secondly, it gives you a breakdown per service. So like over here, I have commercial tint, residential tint, auto tint, like PPF we're closing a lot, auto tint not as much. And it tells you like where the revenue is coming from. So for Google ads, most of the revenue is coming from there because obviously the close rate is highest from there. And per service, PPF is getting the most revenue. So even though we're not closing as much, it's still bringing in the most revenue. This is very important to know for your shop, because like you'll be surprised when you see this data every day. You will make better decisions which will lead to more money. And there's other stuff, by the way, that's also helpful with the sheet that we have set up in particular, is you can see the most common objections you get. Now, let's say in this example, let's say this is a real life example, talk to spouse is the biggest objection you get. Then you know that, hey, if I forget all the other objections, forget about handling everything, forget about the word tracks, if I only focus on figuring out how to handle the talk to spouse objection, I can literally close 5 more sales every single week or every single month or whatever it is. So this will allow you to focus on the lowest hanging fruit. And if you're filling out the speed to lead thing, now this is not accurate data, but what you'll find is like the people that you're calling 60 seconds, 3 minutes, 5 minutes close way more often than the people that you call obviously later. This is just one example of how important the sheet is. Second example, and if you remember, I spoke about the fact that the sheet will show you it's not always about getting better at sales in terms of like the skill. Sometimes it's about the process. So let me show you an example about that. So this is another sheet, sample sheet that I filled out just to give you an example. Okay, so some stuff is filled out. Let's say you're a business owner, you're reviewing the sheet, you've been filling it out every day, and you sit at the end of the week to review the sheet. Now, if you see the dashboard, for example, the first thing we see, closing rate 33%, that's actually a very, very decent closing rate. So there's no issue with your sales. And in this scenario, if you just focus on improving your sales, example, if you focus on like handling all of these objections, if you spend your time doing that, you're actually wasting your time. Because instead, if you look at this number, this conversation rate, in this scenario, we're only speaking to 26% of our leads. That means that without having to get better at sales, if we increase this 26% to 50%, we will make double the sales without getting better at sales. This is why it is so important, because a lot of times you will find out that, hey, you're getting a lot of leads, but you actually end up speaking to only like 30% or 40%. And by the way, when I was doing sales myself for a shop, I had an issue where I was not able to speak to a lot of my leads. I paid like 20 grand to sales trainers just to figure out this issue. And because I've done that, I can help you guys now. And after learning what I did from those sales trainers, I was able to take my conversation rate to 90%. I think it was 85 or 90%. So I was basically speaking to 85 to 90% of the leads after making a few changes. Now, one of the change I made, the biggest change I made, was calling the leads within 60 seconds. That's the biggest thing. But the second thing was setting up some automations to speak to more of the leads. And obviously, this is a lot of stuff we help with. If you want to know what the automations are, by the way, I'll just send it to you. Just comment below. I want to know the automations. But very, very important. It's like banging your head against the wall if you try and improve your closing rate if this is your situation, because if you just get in contact or if you just are able to speak to 50% more leads, you don't have to get better at sales. You can just make 2 times more sales. That's the second reason why this sheet is very, very important. So by now, you should value the importance of tracking your data, and you should know why you need to track all of this. But there's a second point, and a very, very important point that I want to mention is, as a business owner, I want you to stop focusing on the output. Okay, a lot of people focus on the output, they focus on the outcome, they want to hit like 60K a month, 70K a month, 100K a month, whatever it is, that is an output. Stop focusing on the outputs and focus instead on the inputs, because you cannot control the outputs, right? It's just like someone made an analogy of like, if it's a plant, right? You see like a plant in your garden, whatever it is, focusing on the output is just looking at the plant and just hoping it's going to grow, or just like trying to get it to grow, but just by staring at it, right? That's just focusing on the output. If you focus on the input instead, all you need to focus is on watering the plant, giving more seeds. I mean, whatever you do to make a plant grow, I don't know if you can do much more than watering, but you know that, okay, every day if I just water it, that's the input, that's what I can control, and the outputs will follow. So very, very important. If it's for sales, if it's for marketing, whatever it is for your tint shop, I want you to focus on the inputs instead of the outputs, because the outputs will follow when you focus on the inputs. And what inputs should you focus on? Well, you need to focus on calling all of your leads within 60 seconds. That's the first thing, because inputs are in your control. It's in your control to call the leads as soon as possible. So that's the first input I want you to focus on. The second input I want you to focus on is tracking all of this data, tracking all of your leads. And the third input I want you to focus on is actually saying a proper sales script. So like scripting. And then the fourth input you can focus on when it comes to sales is obviously handling objections every time you hear it. And there's like finer detail you can go into this. So like under handling objections, it can mean like something like if they say shopping around, every time they say that, you want to ask the same question, which is like, oh, that's not an issue. What are you hoping to hear? Just to see if I can help. Just like one thing, like, okay, as a tint shop owner, I can't control if this guy goes with me or not, right? That's not in our control, right? That's the person's choice. What I can control is, have I made an effort to handle their objection or tackle their concern? Did I make an effort? And you can honestly, by the way, tell most of you, because I never used to handle objections, right? I only say this to you because I was in the same boat. When I stopped thinking about the outputs, when I started focusing on the inputs, like, hey, what can I do? Okay, what I can do is ask this question. Maybe I'm not that confident in asking the question, but after I ask it 10 times in a row, I will start getting more confident. Once you start focusing on the inputs, I promise you guys, like, you will see your business double, triple, even quadruple, because like in life, you cannot control the outputs. All you can control are inputs. And so that's why tracking is important in a nutshell. Tracking will make you more money, and tracking will get you the shop you've always wanted. And the thing is, like, yes, it does take time, but what is there in life that's worthwhile that does not take time? That's the first thing. Secondly, once you're at a point, let's say you're at 60K, even 40K, 50K, 70K, whatever that point is, you can hire a salesperson or a front desk person. The reason I don't like to call them front desk persons is because most front desk people are not salespeople. They're just there to answer the phone, and they're what I call order takers, right? But you can hire a salesperson and have them do this as their task. And they will make you so much more money if they're tracking versus if they're not, because they know, first of all, they know all of this data. Secondly, like, they know who they've spoken to, who they haven't, who they need to follow up with, who they need to not follow up with, all of that stuff. So the good news is that you don't have to do this forever, because eventually you can hire a salesperson and they can do it all for you. But to get to that point, you have to earn it and you have to be tracking. But that's it for this video. I hope this made sense. I hope you learned something from it, if anything. If you want us to help you with your marketing and sales for your tint shop, for example, set up this tracking sheet for you, there's a link in the description below. You can book a call with us. Totally fine if you don't. It's for the people that want the extra help. If there's anything else you would like to see, just comment below. I'll record a video on it. And yeah, just like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And I will see you in the next video.